Welcome back to HiTEC, the ultimate destination for your daily tech fix. We've got an exciting comparison lineup of mirrorless versus DSLR camera that will leave you in awe. But before we dive into the tech goodness, if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on the latest and greatest in the world of technology. Let's not waste any time. Buckle up as we explore the coolest, most innovative gadgets hitting the shelves today. Don't forget to check out the product links in the description below each video for easy access to purchase your favorite tech products. The great mirrorless versus DSLR camera debate has been rumbling for a few years now. While the decision will always be a personal choice, the major camera manufacturers have chosen their side. Almost all are now entirely focused on developing the best mirrorless cameras. Both Canon and Nikon have been discontinuing, or simply not updating, their DSLR models over the last few years. As a result, mirrorless is very much the default format for new cameras and is our recommendation for most people. But it isn't quite that simple. The best DSLR cameras continue to offer excellent value and have large, established ranges of lenses. In the early days of mirrorless cameras, the situation was very different. If you were a pro, you tended to pick up a DSLR. Hobbyists and amateurs, who were more concerned with weight and portability, would instead lean towards their mirrorless counterparts. Mirrorless versus DSLR, what's the main difference? Let's start with the basics and look at the key differences between these two types of cameras. The key is in the names. DSLR stands for digital single-lens reflex, which works by the light hitting a mirror angled at 45 degrees. That light goes straight up into an optical viewfinder which allows you to see precisely what the lens is looking at. This is a true optical path, with no digital processing in the middle. When you're ready to take a photograph, that mirror moves out of the way to reveal the image sensor, and if you've used one in the past, you'll be familiar with the satisfying, but fairly loud, noise it makes as it does so. By contrast, mirrorless cameras, you've guessed it, don't have a mirror. With these cameras, the light passes through the lens and straight onto the sensor to be processed. DSLRs use the same technology as their film counterparts, which have been around for decades. They're very familiar for anybody who has been serious about photography in recent years. These days, almost no new DSLRs are coming to the market. Finding stock of certain models is becoming harder, but there are still a lot you can buy, including many that are available secondhand. By taking away the mirror, mirrorless cameras give you several advantages and very few disadvantages. The key one is that, since they don't need that big clunky mirror setup, they can be smaller and lighter than their equivalent DSLR counterparts. Mirrorless versus DSLR, size and weight. When mirrorless cameras first entered the market, one of their big selling points was their small size. The first cameras of this kind to get really popular were micro 4/3 models, which traded on the idea that the overall system was much smaller and lighter than their DSLR equivalents. As larger sensor sizes started to become popular, it no longer became a simple statement of fact that mirrorless meant smaller. When you use an APS-C or a full-frame sensor, you might be able to get a smallish body, but the compatible lenses will likely be big and heavy. There's an argument that their outright image quality can't match larger sensors, especially in some shooting scenarios such as low light, but the smaller sensor helps to deliver a much more compact system all round. And it's great for those who need high levels of zoom in a small package. Mirrorless versus DSLR, camera lenses. Technically speaking, if you want the widest possible choice of lenses, a Canon or Nikon DSLR will be your best bet. Each of these options has a huge range of lenses at a variety of price points, with third-party manufacturers such as Sigma and Tamron also providing options. DSLRs have the age advantage, with the lens format having been around for decades. But the options available for mirrorless cameras have caught up rapidly, and now there's a diverse range of lenses to suit almost every need, with more new lenses being added as time goes on. It's really only those with very niche needs who are missing out by choosing mirrorless. Mirrorless versus DSLR, viewfinders. All DSLRs, even the cheapest, come with an optical viewfinder, because it's an integral part of the DSLR design. Although it's relatively rare in current lineups, some entry-level mirrorless cameras, on the other hand, don't have viewfinders at all. The mirrorless cameras use electronic rather than optical viewfinders. That means they display the image directly from the sensor readout and not via an optical mirror/pentaprism system. Electronic viewfinders are advancing at a fast pace, and the latest rarely show any graininess that was an issue in earlier generations, while the visible lag that was once common has all but been eradicated. Mirrorless versus DSLR, autofocus. Professionals who wanted the very fastest autofocusing used to head straight for DSLRs. But these days, with fantastic advances made in mirrorless technology, it's very often the newer type of camera that has the advantage, especially if you go for premium mirrorless options. However, DSLR systems are limited by the fact that their autofocus only works while the mirror is down. This means that fast frame rates are difficult to achieve, since this needs to be moved out of the way each time. You could switch to using live view, but that means the regular AF module is no longer in the light path and a slower contrast detect AF system is used. Mirrorless versus DSLR, continuous shooting. You need a fast continuous shooting mode to capture action shots, and mirrorless cameras are streaking ahead here. This is partly because the mirrorless system has fewer moving parts, but also because many models are now pushing ahead into 4K or even 8K video. This demands serious processing power, which helps with continuous shooting too. You have to be a little careful, though, when looking at the specs. Some mirrorless cameras will boast even higher frame rates than this, but will have to use an electronic shutter to achieve this, and focus will be fixed from the first shot. This isn't great if you're planning to track a moving subject, or shoot under some types of artificial light, where banding can occur without the use of a mechanical shutter. Mirrorless versus DSLR, video quality. DSLRs were well ahead of mirrorless cameras when it came to offering professional HD and full HD video capture. Their vast range of lenses and other accessories made them a hit with pro video makers. The Canon EOS 5D Mk2, in particular, changed the game by shooting video from a full-sized sensor, for far less money than many pro cameras. But the shift has certainly been towards mirrorless cameras' favor in recent years, offering a wealth of video features that most DSLRs can't match. 4K capture is a more common feature for starters on mirrorless cameras, while DSLRs have been slow to offer this functionality. With relatively few new DSLRs appearing in recent months, there's not too many to choose from if you need this kind of video. There's also the efficient live view autofocus and processing power offered by mirrorless cameras, while the growing range of adapters and accessories out there offer video shooters a more complete system. We're also starting to see even higher resolution options come to the market. The Nikon Z9 is one of a few cameras that can shoot 8K video, and it's our top choice. The Canon EOS R5 is another, although it's subject to some recording limitations. We expect 8K to become the norm over the coming years as the technology develops and becomes more commonplace. Mirrorless versus DSLR, camera features. Both DSLRs and mirrorless cameras offer full manual control over exposure and give you the opportunity to shoot both RAW files and JPEGs. Image quality between the two is pretty much identical, aside from the newer sensors found in mirrorless bodies. In any one sector, such as entry-level cameras, enthusiast or pro models, the control layouts and capabilities are pretty similar, too. Entry-level DSLRs tend to hide away the manual controls under a layer of automation, but it's the same for mirrorless cameras. While the feature set of high-end DSLR cameras is generally pretty impressive, it's fair to say that the average mirrorless camera now beats the average DSLR on specs. Most mirrorless cameras offer advanced IBIS, in-body image stabilization systems, advanced autofocus technologies such as tracking and eye detection, 4K video as standard, and more besides. Processing power is at its height in mirrorless cameras again, by virtue of them being newer. These high-end processors facilitate some of the more impressive features, including high ISOs, fast shooting speeds, and 4K video at faster frame rates. The fastest autofocusing, as well as the most comprehensive spread of points across the sensor, is now with mirrorless cameras, while superfast frame rates of up to 30 frames per second are only really possible thanks to the lack of a mirror. Mirrorless versus DSLR, image quality. It's not just about megapixels, though, because the main factor in image quality is sensor size. With the exception of medium format sensors, full-frame sensors are the biggest and offer the best quality in low light. While cameras with APS-C sensors are competitive on image quality and much cheaper, you can get either of these sensor sizes in both DSLRs and mirrorless cameras, but the compact system camera market offers smaller formats too. The Micro Four Thirds format used by Panasonic G-Series and OM system is smaller than APS-C, but so are the cameras and lenses, so you need to weigh up what's most important to you: size or ultimate image quality. Then, there's no intrinsic image quality advantage in a DSLR, given that the same sensor sizes are available in mirrorless cameras, too. Mirrorless versus DSLR, battery life. Battery life comparisons might not be exciting, but they are important when the differences are as great as this. The very affordable Canon EOS Rebel SL3/EOS 250D DSLR, for example, can take 1070 shots on a single charge, while the Fujifilm X-T4 mirrorless camera, a much more advanced model, can only shoot 500 photos before the battery expires. This pattern is repeated across the range of DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. Why's this? DSLR batteries are sometimes larger, though not always, and you might have thought that driving the mirror up and down for each shot would consume more power, and that LCD display would be used just as much. However, mirrorless cameras also have to power an EVF in most cases as well, and this is why they still have much shorter battery lives. So, this is one area where DSLRs do often have a substantial practical advantage. If you're somebody that likes to shoot a lot in any given day, then you'll almost certainly need to invest in a second battery, or look for a mirrorless model that offers USB charging, so you can use a power bank while on the go. That isn't too difficult these days, though most recent mirrorless cameras offer in-camera USB charging. Mirrorless versus DSLR, camera price. You might hope that the simpler design of a compact system camera would make them cheaper to buy, but that's not necessarily the case. If you want a fully featured, proper camera with a viewfinder for the least money, then a DSLR is still the cheapest option, but it's getting a lot closer between the two. Its nearest rivals on price include models such as the Sony Alpha A6000, which packs in an almost identical 24MP APS-C sensor and features a built-in electronic viewfinder. That said, it's only that cheap because it's been superseded. You'll find a comprehensive overview of the best budget cameras in our dedicated roundup. Once you get into enthusiast and pro market, however, the differences largely disappear. For any given amount of money you get broadly the same features, performance, and power. This is borne out by many of the premium entries in our list of the best cameras overall. Mirrorless versus DSLR, final verdict. In times gone by it was harder to give a definitive answer in the mirrorless versus DSLR debate. But these days it's becoming increasingly difficult to argue the case for the DSLR. With more and more mirrorless models coming onto the market, and fewer DSLRs, it's clear which way the future lies. Mirrorless cameras give you the advantage in many different scenarios. They are generally lighter and smaller than their DSLR equivalents, often with smaller and lighter lenses to match, too. They bring a comprehensive, modern feature set, such as superlative AF tracking performance, 4K video recording and IBIS, where DSLRs are now starting to fall behind. That said, there's still something to be said for DSLRs, and there's still some life in the old dog yet. On the whole, because they're older and lack EVFs, they tend to be a cheaper proposition than mirrorless cameras, and you can pick up some great bargains. And that wraps up today's journey through the world of tech wonders on HiTEC. If you enjoyed this video and discovered some must-have gadgets, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. You won't want to miss our daily dive into the latest and greatest in technology.